I do not have a name anymore. Whatever I was in life has peeled away like old wallpaper in an abandoned house. What remains is a voice drifting somewhere between memory and consequence, between truth and the kind of lies that become truth when enough powerful men repeat them. And yeah, I suppose this is what's left of me. A lingering thought, a shadow that refuses to dissolve, a whisper that still remembers what happened and what was hidden. People think my story ended in a cell. They think the sheet, the bunk, the guards who slept, the cameras that blinked at the wrong time. Yeah, they think that was the ending. But endings don't happen that cleanly. This, whatever this place is, isn't silence. It's reflection. It's the replay of everything I built, the network behind me, the powerful hands that shaped my rise and guaranteed my fall. If you want to know who was behind my network, who benefited, who visited, who enabled, who whispered instructions without ever putting anything in writing, then listen closely. Because now, finally, I have nothing left to protect. I didn't start out as a mastermind. No one does. As a kid in Seagate, I was just another boy trying to figure out why the world made rules for some people and not for others. I saw early that money didn't create power, perception did, confidence did, the illusion of belonging did. And so I learned to mimic confidence, even when my stomach clenched with fear. I learned to walk like someone who knew he was welcome, even when I wasn't. I learned that lies told quietly, calmly, and with just the right amount of eye contact could move mountains faster than truth. That was my first sin. Learning to lie expertly, not about the big things at first, about the small things, the harmless things, harmless until they weren't. Later, when I entered the world of finance, I realized no one actually understands the system, not fully. It's smoke and mirrors, built on predictions and probability, and confidence, always confidence. People trusted me because I made them feel seen. I mirrored their desires, their fears, their ambitions. I learned to spot their weaknesses. I learned how to use those weaknesses like keys. That was when doors started opening. Doors into rooms I never imagined. Rooms filled with men who built empires, funded campaigns, reshaped economies, toppled governments with one meeting, one call, one investment. These men, they wanted two things above all: access and invisibility. I became their bridge, their translator, their facilitator. I was the one who arranged the dinners no one was supposed to know about, the flights that were never logged properly, the guests who arrived under different names, the favors exchanged in silence. I wasn't the center of their world. I was the lubricant that kept the gears of their machine turning smoothly. They used me because I understood the rules without ever being told them. I knew when to talk, when to shut up, when to observe, when to erase. And the network grew. People always list names like they're reading from a tabloid headline: Trump, Clinton, Prince Andrew, but those are just the visible constellations, bright lights in a sky full of darker, more influential stars. The real power was quieter. Men in hedge funds controlling billions, lawyers who served as the architects behind shadow empires, scientists who traded research for access, diplomats who passed information casually over glasses of wine, billionaires who wanted the kind of thrill money alone couldn't give them. I didn't control them. They didn't control me. We were entangled, a web of shared dirt, shared secrets, shared risk. That's what people never understand. It wasn't about sex. That was the surface, the symptom. The real currency was information. I learned that the more a man feared exposure, the more tightly he would cling to the person who could expose him. The more obedient he became, the more useful. That's what made my homes valuable. My jet, my island. They were ecosystems built for observation, for loosening tongues, for collapsing boundaries. And sometimes for documenting moments that the men involved assumed would disappear into the warm air of the Caribbean. I never needed to blackmail anyone. I just needed them to believe that I could. When journalists began digging years before my final arrest, I noticed shifts. Friends became cautious. Invitations stopped. Some of the men who once greeted me with bear hugs suddenly kept their distance. Others doubled down in public while begging me in private to destroy anything that might link us. The most powerful among them, the ones the public doesn't know, used a different tactic. They didn't plead. They instructed, quietly, measured. They told me where I could travel, which events I shouldn't attend, which people I shouldn't be seen with. They weren't protecting me. They were containing me, isolating me, ensuring I could fall without pulling them down. I ignored the signs. Ego makes men deaf. And I had a very big ego. I remember one night, this is one of those things that might be memory or might be imagination. I can no longer tell standing alone on my island balcony. The stars were sharp. The waves sounded wrong, like they were echoing off something that shouldn't have been there. I felt watched. Not by my staff, not by my guests, by something else, a presence. Human or not, who knows? But I knew someone was waiting for me to slip. Years later, after death, I sometimes wonder if that presence was guilt or fate, or the network itself coiling around me like a predator waiting to strike. Then came 2019, the headlines, the investigations, the whispers turning into roars, victims stepping forward with courage that I never expected. They were the ones with real strength. I was the coward. My arrest was not a surprise. Not really. The FBI moved like they had been preparing for months, maybe years, and perhaps someone in my network helped them. Not to deliver justice. No, justice was never their goal. They needed me removed, silenced, buried. They needed the system to eat me alive before I dragged them into the light. Trump's reaction was predictable. Loud denial, quick distancing. A man who lived off scandal suddenly pretending to be scandal-free. He had once said, "I loved women on the younger side." He forgot that line fast, or pretended to. Pretending is his favorite trick. He wasn't at the center of my network, but he lived in its orbit. He benefited from the same culture, the same indulgence, the same absence of accountability. My time inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center felt unreal. Walls that hummed, lights that never dimmed, guards whose hatred felt personal, inmates who wanted revenge for crimes they didn't even witness. I felt watched constantly, even at night, especially at night. Sometimes I'd wake up convinced someone was standing beside the bed, but when I looked, nothing. Or maybe something had just slipped away in time. My cellmate whispered strange things in his sleep, names, dates. Sometimes he said my name, even though I never told him anything. I would ask what he dreamed, and he'd look at me like he didn't recognize my face. The next day, he'd go back to normal, calm as ever. Then came that night the bruising, the confusion, hands I couldn't identify, pressure, a moment of darkness. People say I was attacked. Others say I harmed myself. The truth is, the memory slips away when I try to grasp it, like someone wiped it clean, or like my own mind refuses to replay it. That uncertainty, that fog might be the strangest part of everything. Suicide watch broke me. The lights, the paper clothes, the constant eyes watching. I felt stripped of identity, reduced to a number, a problem waiting to be solved. My lawyers tried to help, but their voices sounded distant, muffled, as if coming from underwater. When they removed me from suicide watch, I knew it wasn't because they believed I was safe. It was because the system had grown tired. Maybe someone pushed. Maybe someone wanted access. Maybe no one cared. Hard to say now. On August 8th, I signed my will, my final act of control. A spiteful move against victims who deserved everything. I denied them. My hand shook as I signed, not from fear of losing money, but from the certainty that I wouldn't live beyond the week. 2 days later, the silence fell. The guards slept. Cameras flickered. My cellmate disappeared hours earlier. The hallway was so still it felt like the building was holding its breath. I heard something, a footstep, maybe, or maybe a whisper, or maybe nothing at all. But the feeling that someone was there struck me like ice water. I tied the sheet. I knelt, and for the first time in my life, I saw the truth of myself without illusions, without wealth, without power, without the men who used me, without the lies I used to justify every sin. I saw myself as the victims must have seen me. A predator, a manipulator, a coward, and then it all went dark. Here, in whatever this afterplace is, the network looks clearer. Not as people, as mechanisms, machines, patterns, systems that produce men like me and protect men even worse than me. Systems that live on long after one man dies. People still want the list, the names, the secrets. They think that if they could see it, everything would make sense. But the list isn't the key. The list is just the surface. What matters is the foundation beneath it. The culture of indulgence, the economy of silence, the politics of mutual destruction, the unspoken agreements between powerful men who pretend to be moral while hiding monsters inside themselves. I wasn't their leader. I wasn't their mastermind. I was their tool. And when a tool breaks, it is discarded. That is the truth that led to my death. If anything I say now has value, let it be this. Do not look only at me. Look at the hands behind me. Look at the shadows. Look at the patterns. Look at the systems. Look at the silence. Because silence is where evil hides longest. And in the end, silence was the only thing that greeted me. Silence and the weight of everything I failed to face while I was alive. That is all.